You are lying to yourself, and you have been doing it for years. You tell yourself you are waiting for the right moment, the right mood, or the elusive spark of inspiration. You believe that somewhere beneath the layers of fatigue and distraction, there is a hidden reserve of motivation that will eventually rise to the surface and carry you to victory. But that reserve does not exist. You are not tired. You are not overwhelmed. You are simply unstructured. There was a class of men in the ancient world who did not suffer from this phantom paralysis. They were not gods, and they were not born with a genetic superiority and willpower. They were engineers of the human will. Consider the Roman centurion standing on the frozen edge of the Germanic frontier in the dead of winter. The rain is turning to sleet. His men are shivering, cursing the cold, longing for the hearths of their homes. The centurion does not wait to feel like digging the trench. He does not check his emotional state. He does not negotiate with his mood. He simply drops his shovel into the mud, and the motion itself commands the mind to follow. This was not an accident of personality. It was a system, a psychological technology forged in the Republic and perfected in the Empire. It was a dual-engine system known to the ancients as Industria and Constantia. Industria was the fierce application of directed effort, the refusal to leave a task unfinished. Constantia was the unyielding firmness that held that effort in place, regardless of the screaming protests of the body or the chaos of the external world. These were not merely virtues to be admired from a distance. They were mechanisms to be installed. They replaced the chaotic whims of human emotion with the predictable precision of a siege engine. But there is a cost to this installation. To kill procrastination, you must first kill the part of yourself that believes you have a choice. You must execute the part of your identity that thinks it is the sovereign commander of your daily schedule. This transformation requires you to dismantle the throne of your own ego and replace it with a system of absolute obligation. If you are comfortable in your current state, this transmission is not for you. If you want to remain the victim of your own moods, turn away now. But if you are ready to stop negotiating with your own weakness, subscribe to this channel and commit to the next phase. We are not here to inspire you. We are here to restructure you. Mark sat in the pale blue glow of 3 monitors, the low hum of the office HVAC system drowning out the silence of his own disappointment. He was 37 years old, an account manager for a logistics firm, a position that required nothing more than basic competence and sustained attention. Yet he felt like a prisoner of war in his own life. The quarterly strategy report was due by midnight. He had known about it for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, he had engaged in a relentless, exhausting campaign of negotiation with himself. He had bargained with the mirror, promising that Tuesday would be the day of action, then Wednesday, then the weekend. He was a man trapped in a cycle of hope and collapse. He tried to solve the struggle through the rituals of the modern era. He spent $40 on a productivity app for his phone, a sleek digital interface that promised gamified rewards and colorful charts for completed tasks. It worked for 2 days. The novelty faded, and he began to ignore the notifications, swiping them away with a practiced thumb. He bought a high-quality leather planner, believing that the tactile act of writing would somehow imprint the intention onto his soul. He filled out the first page with neat, determined handwriting. The rest of the book remained blank, a paper monument to his failure. He listened to podcasts about discipline while he drove to work, feeling a temporary surge of adrenaline as the speaker shouted about seizing the day. But by the time he sat in his ergonomic chair, the adrenaline had evaporated, replaced by a heavy, gray fog. He checked his email. He reorganized his desktop icons. He researched new diets. He cleaned his coffee mug. He did everything except the task that mattered. This was his cycle. It was a loop of high-stakes intention, followed by low-level avoidance. He told himself he was just in a slump. He blamed the fluorescent lights of the office. He blamed his sleep schedule. He blamed the modern world for fragmenting his attention span. But deep down, in the quiet moments before he fell asleep, he knew the truth. The problem was not the world. The problem was that he still believed he needed to feel like doing something in order to do it. He was waiting for a feeling that would never come. He was a man waiting for a train on a track that had never been laid. The pattern repeated with a terrifying predictability that should have been obvious to him. but he was too close to the machine to see the gears turning. Mark would wake up on a Monday morning with a solemn vow, a sense of existential urgency that felt like a heavy stone in his chest. Today is the day. He would sit at his desk, open the document, and stare at the blinking cursor. Within 30 seconds, a thought would arise, subtle and insidious. I need coffee first. Then, I should just clear these few emails so I can focus with a clear mind. Then, I am too stressed to focus effectively. I will take a 10-minute break to reset my mental state. The 10-minute break became an hour of scrolling through news feeds he did not care about, watching short videos that left no memory trace. The hour became the entire afternoon. The paralysis was not laziness. It was active resistance. His brain was working overtime, utilizing its immense creative power to prevent him from acting. Psychologically, Mark was operating on a broken model of execution, a model that most of the modern world accepts as truth. He believed in motivation, action, result. He believed that motivation was the fuel and that without it, the engine could not start. He waited for the fuel to arrive before starting the engine, but the engine was cold. It had not run in years. The fuel simply evaporated in the chamber. This was the trap of the modern man. He had been taught that his feelings were the sovereign authority of his life. If he did not feel like it, he thought he could not do it. He was a slave to his own internal weather patterns, blown about by winds of emotion that shifted hour by hour. He needed a system that did not care about the weather. He needed an architecture that stood firm regardless of the storm. In the archives of Roman thought, there was a concept that addressed this exact structural flaw. The Romans did not speak of mood or inspiration when it came to duty. They spoke of officium. It was duty, but not the weak, passive duty of the modern era. This was a duty that acted as a mechanical replacement for the will. It was the understanding that the mind is a treacherous advisor, and the only way to conquer it is to remove its vote entirely. The system was waiting, buried under centuries of softer, gentler philosophies. It was the system of the legion. The ancient system was brutally simple, elegant in its lack of regard for human comfort. It relied on two pillars that the Romans valued above all else in a soldier: Industria and Constantia. Industria was not merely hard work in the way we understand it today. It was diligence. It was the refusal to leave a task unfinished. It was the application of force to an object until it yielded, whether that object was a stone wall or a ledger book. Constantia was the force that held Industria in place. It was steadiness. It was the refusal to be moved by hardship, pain, boredom, or distraction. Together they formed a closed loop. Industria was the sword strike. Constantia was the shield arm that never tired. The psychological insight here is profound and often ignored in the age of life hacking. The Romans understood that human willpower is a finite resource, a battery that depletes with every decision. If you wake up in the morning and ask yourself, "Should I work out today?" you have already lost. You have spent your precious store of willpower on the question itself. The Roman system eliminated the question. The legionary did not ask if he wanted to dig the trench. The order had been given by the centurion. The time had been set by the movement of the sun. The only variable was the execution. This is the scheduled obligation. You replace the desperate need for motivation with a pre-decided contract. You are not choosing to work. You are simply working because the order has been issued. Mark caught a glimpse of this in a moment of despair. He was reading a biography of a Roman general, specifically a passage about the construction of a marching camp. The general did not wait for the men to be inspired. He did not give speeches about their potential. He marked the lines in the dirt. He assigned the watches. The men worked in shifts, not when they felt the urge, but when the system demanded it. Mark looked at his blank planner. He realized he had been writing goals. The Romans did not write goals. They wrote orders. He picked up his pen. He did not write, "Work on report." That was a wish. He wrote, from 1800 to 1900, write section 1. No exceptions. No negotiation. He wrote it as if he were issuing a command to a subordinate. He posted it on his wall. a white piece of paper against the beige monotony of his cubicle. It was a public declaration in the privacy of his own room. He felt a strange shift in his chest, a tightening. The internal war had begun. He had drawn a line in the sand, and he knew that his own mind would soon cross it. The first test arrived within hours, striking with the precision of a hidden ambush. Mark had just finished dinner, the meal sitting heavy in his stomach. The couch in the living room looked inviting, a soft trap promising safety. The television remote was within reach, a lever of instant escape. His brain, the master negotiator that had ruled his life for 3 decades, whispered the first lie. It did not sound like a lie. It sounded like a reason. "You have had a long day," the voice said, smooth and persuasive. "You are mentally fatigued. You deserve 1 hour to decompose. If you rest now, you will work twice as hard later." The sensation was physical. It was a pull in his chest, a heaviness in his limbs that felt like lead. This was the internal war the Stoics spoke of, the battle between the ruling faculty of the mind and the seductive pull of the flesh. In the Roman worldview, this was the conflict between virtues, the courage to do the right thing, and voluptas, the pursuit of pleasure. The vow on the wall stood in opposition to the desire of the body. Mark looked at the paper. Industria, diligence. He had issued the order. If he rescinded it now, simply because he felt tired, he was not a commander. He was a weak politician, a corrupt magistrate, beholden to the mob of his own feelings. He stood up. He walked to the desk. The resistance was screaming now, a siren song of comfort. It felt like walking through deep water, every step requiring conscious effort. He sat. He opened the document. The first 10 minutes were agonizing. His brain threw distractions at him like javelins. A phantom vibration from his phone in the other room. A sudden, urgent need to check the weather for tomorrow. A memory of an unpaid bill. This was the hidden loophole. The mind uses variety to undermine progress. It creates new urgencies, new fears, new desires. To break the formation, it does not fight the task directly. It fights the structure around the task. Mark realized that his willpower was buckling. He needed a second principle, a reinforcement, Constantia. He had to fix the structure so rigidly that there was no room for the mind to maneuver. He left the phone in the other room. He closed the browser tabs. He eliminated the variety. He typed one word, then another. He did not stop until the minute hand crossed the hour. He stood up, sweating slightly, exhausted by the simple act of sitting still. He had won the skirmish, but he knew the war was just beginning. The system had held, but the mind was already plotting its next offensive, analyzing the defenses for a weak point. Mark realized that variety was the enemy of discipline. The Roman legion did not invent a new way to march every morning. They did not debate the best route to the mess hall. They marched at the same pace, set camp in the same formation, and ate the same rations, day after punishing day. This was not for lack of imagination. It was to preserve the will. By eliminating variety, they eliminated decisions. Decisions were the drain through which willpower escaped. Mark applied this to his life with a fanatical intensity. He woke up at the same time to the minute. He drank the same coffee from the same mug. He started work at the same second. He called this the locked system. He was building a fortress of routine around his fragile intent. For 3 days, the mental revolt continued. His brain screamed for novelty. It demanded a break from the monotony. It told him he was becoming a robot, a machine stripped of its humanity. It whispered that life should be spontaneous and joyful. But Mark held the line. He remembered the centurion. The soldier in the rain did not crave novelty. He craved survival. And survival came from the formation. On the 4th day, something shifted. It was a subtle change, barely perceptible. He sat at the desk, and his hand reached for the mouse before his mind could object. The body was learning to move without the permission of the conscious will. This was the breakthrough. The neural pathways were deepening. The grooves of habit were being cut into the hard earth of his psychology. This was the beginning of automaticity. Then chaos struck. It was inevitable. The universe of horror is a perfect routine. His son woke up at 2 a.m. with a high fever, crying and disoriented. Mark spent the night in the emergency room, pacing the fluorescent corridors, his mind foggy with fear and exhaustion. He missed his morning block. He missed his scheduled tasks. The carefully constructed timetable lay in ruins. The old Mark would have crumbled. He would have looked at the broken schedule and declared the day a failure. He would have said, "The day is ruined. I will start again tomorrow." That was the perfectionist trap, the all-or-nothing lie that had kept him in chains for years. But the system of Constantia offered a different truth: continuity over perfection. A legion forced to detour by a swamp does not disband. It does not throw down its weapons and weep. It reforms the column and marches on. Mark did not wait for a clean slate. He did not wait for the next Monday. He adjusted the formation. He took 10 minutes in the hospital waiting room, with the sound of crying children and the smell of antiseptic in his nose, to send the critical emails on his phone. He did a reduced block of work at 11 p.m. when he finally returned home, exhausted but resolute. It was not perfect. It was ugly. But the chain was not broken. The system survived the chaos. This was the true test of the structure. A system that cannot survive chaos is a toy. A system that bends but does not break is a weapon. He had proven that his obligation was stronger than his circumstances. The all-or-nothing lie is the final, desperate defense of the procrastinating mind. It is the belief that if you cannot do the task with 100% intensity, in the perfect environment, with the perfect mindset, then you should not do it at all. Mark had lived by this lie for decades, using it as a shield to avoid the discomfort of mediocrity. But the pre-solution system destroyed it. He developed what he called minimum viable formations. These were pre-decided responses for imperfect conditions. He realized that the Roman army did not only train for sunny days on the parade ground, they trained for the mud, the rain, the night march. They had protocols for every disaster. Mark wrote down his protocols. If he was traveling, the workout was not skipped. It was reduced to a specific set of bodyweight exercises in the hotel room, a process that took exactly 12 minutes. If he was exhausted, the writing session was not canceled. It was reduced to 15 minutes of outlining, a mere skeleton of the work. This was the Roman concept of the quincunx, a flexible formation that could adapt to any terrain without losing its integrity. He practiced this under fire. A deadline at work shifted unexpectedly, threatening to cannibalize his personal schedule. He did not panic. He did not freeze. He executed the contingency plan. He had pre-decided that if work exceeds 50 hours, personal project time shifts to early morning only for a duration of 30 minutes. He did not have to think. He did not have to bargain with his fatigue. He just executed. The obstacle was absorbed by the flexibility of the system. He was no longer a rigid structure, waiting to crack under pressure. He was a fluid force, like water moving around a stone. The pre-solution principle was simple but transformative. You do not decide in the moment of crisis. You decide months in advance. You draft the battle plans before the enemy is even in sight. You script your responses to fatigue, illness, and distraction. When the crisis hits, you are not making a choice. You are following a script. This removed the crushing burden of willpower exactly when willpower was at its lowest. The system was now running on autopilot, engaging the clutch before the driver could stall the engine. 6 months passed. The seasons turned. Mark sat at his desk in the dim light of a late autumn evening. The quarterly report was due again. The old feeling of dread, the tightening in the stomach, was absent. He did not look at the calendar with hope. He did not check his mood. He simply checked the schedule. The schedule dictated that the report was drafted on Tuesday. He opened the file. He typed. He did not struggle. He did not bargain. He worked with a terrifying efficiency that felt alien to him, as if he were watching someone else from across the room. His colleagues noticed the change. They saw a man who moved with a heavier, more deliberate step. They asked him what had changed. They asked for his secret, expecting him to recommend a book, a supplement, or a life coach. He looked at them, His eyes tired but steady, he told them. I stopped asking myself if I wanted to do it. This disturbed them. They wanted a trick, a life hack, a shortcut. He gave them a death sentence for their old selves. He had achieved the automatic self. His identity had shifted on a fundamental level. He was no longer a man who procrastinated. He was a man who executed. The behavior was now identity level. He did the work because that is what he was. He did the work because a machine does not ask permission to function. The Roman aesthetic had been internalized. He carried his own law within him, a private legislation that governed his every hour. The transformation was complete. The man who sat in this chair was unrecognizable to the man who sat there 6 months ago. He was harder, he was colder, he was less prone to the whims of emotion, but he was free. The freedom was not the freedom to do whatever he wanted. That was the freedom of a child. It was the freedom from his own weakness. It was the freedom of the legion, the freedom of the man who has conquered himself. You, watching this right now, are standing at the crossroads. You can close this video and return to the negotiation table with your weakness. You can continue to hope that one day the lightning of motivation will strike you, transforming you into the person you wish to be. Or you can enlist. You can issue the order. You can lock the system. You can kill the part of you that thinks it has a choice. The choice is yours, but not for long. Subscribe to the channel for the next transmission. In the comments, write your vow, not your goal, your order. See yourself in the next formation. The legion does not wait. Virtus waits for no man.